The gavel cracked through the auction hall like a thunderclap, silencing the murmur of restless bidders. In the front row, 7-year-old Emma Brownlee clutched a pink piggy bank tight to her chest. Its contents a patchwork of coins, crumpled bills, and the weight of 5 years' childhood savings jingled faintly with her trembling. Her red-rimmed eyes scanned the sea of raised paddles towering over her. Each number called out another blow. 57,500, the auctioneer announced. Across the crowded room, the German Shepherd, known as Rex, snapped to attention. His ears pricked, and his deep brown eyes locked on Emma. A low whine rose in his throat as he lunged forward, tugging against his handler's grip, desperate to reach the girl who hadn't spoken to another soul in 5 years, but who whispered every secret into his ear. The leash held. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A dog didn't behave that way for just anyone. The connection between them was unmistakable. Beside Emma, her mother Margaret wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She could feel the heartbeat beneath her daughter's tiny frame, pounding with something more than fear, something primal. Grief, hope, longing. This wasn't about winning a dog. It was about bringing her father back. Deputy Samuel Brownlee had died in 2010, killed shielding another officer during a pursuit gone wrong. Emma was 3. Rex had survived the crash. Ever since the German Shepherd was more than a service dog. He had been her playmate, her guardian, and after the silence swallowed her voice, the only one she still spoke to, Margaret remembered the Wednesday visits. Emma's body would relax the moment she saw Rex. Her lips moved again. Whispers only the dog could hear. Christmas footage once showed her reading The Night Before Christmas aloud to him, her voice soft but animated. No sound. But it was something. Every week, Emma clutched her father's old badge around her neck like a talisman, and every week the badge guided her back to Rex. That was why they were here. That was why this mattered. This wasn't a bid. It was a rescue. The morning Samuel died had begun like any other. He kissed Margaret goodbye at the door, tousled little Emma's curls, and whistled for Rex, who bounded to the cruiser like it was a game. They left together, just like always. By afternoon, Margaret's world had cracked open. A high-speed chase. Gunfire. The cruiser forced off the road. Samuel never came home. Rex did. Bruised but breathing, he was found curled beside Samuel's body, having stayed even after the shooting ended. That night, Margaret tucked her daughter into bed with her father's empty uniform shirt. Emma didn't speak. Not that night. Not the next. Not again unless Rex was there. The silence took root slowly. At first, Emma spoke only to Margaret. Then, only in whispers. Then, nothing. Doctors called it selective mutism, but Margaret knew what it really was. A wound too deep for language. A voice lost in the same dark place where Samuel had disappeared. Rex, too, had changed. He stopped responding to commands like before. Handlers noticed his withdrawal, refused food, grew stiff in training. The department called it behavioral decline. Margaret called it grief. Still, they allowed Emma weekly visits. Only then would Rex perk up. Only then would Emma smile. 5 years passed. Like fog rolling across a valley, slow, silent, irreversible. And now Rex was being sold. A quiet departmental email shattered what little peace Margaret had built. The sheriff's office was retiring Rex. Policy dictated that all K-9 units must be auctioned, no exceptions. A cautionary policy born from lawsuits and legal fears. To the department, it was liability. To Margaret, it was loss all over again. She read the email twice, hands trembling. "They can't do this," she whispered. Across the room, Richard, her second husband, barely looked up from his newspaper. "They've always owned the dog Maggie," he said too calmly. "Emma has to move on." But outside on the porch swing, Emma sat motionless, a picture book open in her lap, untouched. She stared into the distance, waiting for something no one else seemed to believe in anymore. The next morning, Margaret drove in silence. Emma clutched her father's badge on its chain, her small fingers worrying the engraved numbers like a prayer. Margaret had rehearsed what to say, but when the words came, they still felt like betrayal. "They're retiring Rex," she said gently. "He'll be auctioned." Emma didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She simply went still so completely, it frightened Margaret more than any tantrum could have. That evening, their therapist, Dr. Winters, made an emergency house call. "This is a significant regression," she said, after Emma sat mute through their session eyes, fixed on an old photo of her father and Rex. Her relationship with Rex is the only thread keeping her connected to the world. Sever it now, and we risk losing that tether altogether. Margaret didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and uploaded a photo, Emma kneeling beside Rex, her face lit by something close to peace. The GoFundMe title read, "Help Emma Keep Her Father's Legacy." She launched it at midnight. By dawn, there was $487. It wasn't much, but it was something. Over the next few days, Margaret shared the link everywhere: church friends, old police colleagues, PTA moms. The community responded with hesitant kindness. The local paper picked up the story. Child of fallen hero seeks to reunite with father's canine partner. The image of Emma, wide-eyed and silent beside her dog, struck a chord, but it also struck nerves. Some comments praised the family's determination. Others accused them of being emotionally reckless. "These are working animals," one reader posted. "Not pets, not therapy dogs." Television stations aired segments. Experts debated on live broadcasts. Canine handlers warned of the risks. Child psychologists spoke of the rewards. Meanwhile, the GoFundMe crept toward $3,500. Margaret clung to hope like it was all she had left. But inside her own home, another battle was brewing, quieter, colder. Richard had begun to pull away. On the surface, Richard remained supportive, smiling in photos, standing beside Emma for the newspaper. But in private, his tone shifted. "This has gone far enough, Maggie," he muttered one night as they folded laundry. "Half the county's acting like Samuel just died. What about our family? What about moving forward?" Margaret paused, a small shirt clenched in her hands. "Emma is our family." But Richard wasn't listening. Not really. "She wears his badge like a sacred relic," he said bitterly. "His uniform's still in the closet. And now you want his dog too? When does my family begin?" The silence that followed said everything. 2 days later, Margaret saw him taking a call in the garage. Unusual. Through the window, she caught the stiff angles of his body, the hush in his voice. Suspicion bloomed like cold water on the skin. Then Mrs. Bennett, Emma's teacher, casually mentioned it at a parent-teacher meeting. "Your husband said the therapist thought a new puppy might help," she said kindly. "A fresh start," he called it. Margaret sat frozen in her seat. Dr. Winters had said the opposite. Later, searching Richard's desk for stamps, Margaret found it a business card. James Blackwell, Elite Security Services. On the back, in Richard's handwriting, "Thursday 2 p.m., Westridge Coffee." The same Blackwell quoted in the paper, eager to acquire Rex for breeding and training contracts. A man who saw the dog, not as a lifeline, but an asset. Margaret drove past the cafe at 1:50. There he was. Richard. Sitting across from Blackwell, signing documents with a smile she no longer recognized. Margaret's stomach twisted as she parked down the block. She didn't confront him, not yet. But the betrayal calcified something inside her. At home, she masked it. For Emma's sake. For now. Then something shifted on the horizon. A new name began circulating: Steve Wells. A wealthy farmer. Reclusive. quiet, known for generosity but rarely seen in public. He began asking questions at the K9 facility about Rex's training health, how he behaved around children. He even asked which days Emma visited. The handlers found it odd. Margaret found it unsettling. Another bitter. Another wall to climb. Meanwhile, the GoFundMe had plateaued. Margaret sold her wedding ring from Samuel, then her camera. She considered a second mortgage. Every dollar mattered. Emma, oblivious to adult negotiations and betrayals, simply continued marking off calendar days until her next visit with Rex. Those visits had become more than routine. They were restoration. Rex, who had grown distant over the years, came alive when Emma entered. His ears lifted. His focus sharpened. His responses improved. During one visit, Officer Murphy captured footage from the security camera. Emma held her father's badge up to Rex. The dog immediately straightened alert. When she whispered to him, he placed a single paw on her knee, calm and steady, just like he used to for Samuel's silent signals. Murphy saved a copy for himself. In his official report, he wrote, "This is not just familiarity. This is a working bond." A week before the auction, Margaret received a message Steve Wells wanted to meet. She agreed cautiously and chose a neutral location, the county library. Wells arrived exactly on time. Weathered hands, worn jeans, no entourage. He declined coffee, sat down, got straight to the point. "I understand you're trying to purchase your late husband's K9 partner," he said. "I want to know why." Margaret hesitated. She'd prepared a list of talking points, therapy outcomes, medical backing, but the directness in his gaze disarmed her. "He's the only one who was with Samuel when he died," she said. "And he's the only one Emma talks to. She doesn't need a pet. She needs him." Wells listened, expression unreadable. Then he said quietly, "Blackwell's prepared to bid up to 50,000. He wants Rex's bloodline." The words hit like a stone to the ribs. Margaret barely had 5,000. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "You working with him too?" "No," Wells replied. A shadow passed over his face. "I have my own reasons." He stood, paused at the door. "Your daughter shares a birthday with her father, right, March 10th. Margaret nodded, confused. "My Sarah would have been 35 this year," he said, almost a whisper. "She loved dogs." Before she could ask more, he was gone. The next morning was Emma's birthday. She didn't care for cake. She barely noticed the gifts. She sat at the kitchen table, carefully drawing a picture of Rex, focused, precise. When Richard entered, she shielded her work with her arm. Margaret watched the small gesture. Her heart cracked. Later, Richard handed her an envelope. "I've withdrawn from Blackwell's offer," he said, "and added what I could to the fund. Won $200 in cash. I talked to Dr. Winters," he added. "She helped me understand. Rex doesn't heal her because he reminds her of Samuel. He heals her because he doesn't ask her to be anything but how she is." For once, Margaret believed him. They sat with Emma on the porch that evening, the stars pressing down gently. "We'll try our very best to bring Rex home," Margaret whispered. "I can't promise we'll win, but I promise we'll try." Emma didn't speak, but her hand found Margaret's and squeezed. March 15th dawned crisp and clear, but tension rippled through the Weld County Community Center like an underground current. This auction, usually a quiet fundraiser, was now the stage for a storm. Outside, news vans lined the parking lot. Inside, rows of folding chairs, filled with local families, business owners, uniformed officers, and 3 sharply dressed men from elite security. Emma clutched her ceramic piggy bank as if it were a shield. She had filled it with every coin earned from birthdays, tooth fairy visits, and allowance. 5 years of childhood reduced to a few dollars, and a trembling hope. Margaret braided her daughter's hair with shaking fingers. "If it gets too loud," she whispered, "squeeze my hand, and we'll step outside." Emma nodded silently. Inside, Chief Dawson intercepted them. His voice held the stiffness of forced empathy. If circumstances require it, Emma will still have visitation rights. Margaret's reply was firm. We're not here for visits, Chief. We're here to bring Rex home. They took their seats near the front. Across the aisle, James Blackwell waited with the calm of a man who had never lost a bid. Steve Wells entered last. He took a seat at the back. Alone, Officer Murphy emerged with Rex at his side. The German shepherd was all composure and discipline, but his eyes scanned the room. When he spotted Emma, his entire body shifted. Focused, alert, ready. The auction began. Gift baskets, sports memorabilia, vacation vouchers. Margaret barely noticed. Then the auctioneer's voice rang out. Next item, K9 Rex, 7 years old. Certified in narcotics detection, suspect apprehension and search and rescue. Training value approximately $12,500. Opening bid $2,500. Margaret raised her paddle immediately. Others followed, including Blackwell. The numbers rose fast. $3,000, $3,500, $5,000. Most dropped out. Only Margaret and Blackwell remained. Emma sat with her piggy bank in her lap, carefully counting coins with shaky hands. Every sound, every flash of the photographer's camera blurred around her, but she kept counting. At $5,500, Margaret hesitated. She'd reached their limit. Her hands tightened on the paddle. Across the aisle, Blackwell didn't blink. $7,500, he called out. The auctioneer swept the crowd. Do I hear 8? Silence, until a voice boomed from the back. 10,000. Heads turned. Steve Wells stood raising his paddle for the first time. A hush fell. Even Blackwell's polished demeanor cracked, but he lifted his paddle anyway. 12,500. Wells responded without missing a beat. 15. The bidding escalated like a landslide. 20, 25, 30. Margaret could only watch. Emma, still counting, didn't seem to register the whirlwind around her. She had stacked $24.75 neatly beside her. Then, for the first time in public in years, she whispered something. Margaret leaned in. What is it, sweetheart? Emma pointed to her money, then to Rex. Her meaning couldn't have been clearer. She wanted to bid. Margaret rose. My daughter, she said, would like to add $24.75 to our last bid. It's every penny she's saved since she was 3. The room stilled. Even Blackwell didn't move. The auctioneer swallowed hard. I have $5,765 from bidder 28. It wasn't enough. But it wasn't about money anymore. Blackwell slowly stood. $50,000. Every head turned toward Steve Wells. He didn't hesitate. 60. A pause, then silence. Blackwell sat down. The auctioneer's voice cracked as he raised the gavel. Going once, twice. Sold to bidder 28. Applause erupted. Officer Murphy led Rex to Emma. Kneeling, he extended the leash with the ceremony reserved for official handler transfers. K9 Rex new handler, he said. Emma reached up and smiled. The first real smile anyone had seen in 5 years. Rex leaned into her tail, wagging eyes locked on hers, like she was his command post. And maybe she was. But the celebration didn't last. Chief Dawson stepped forward, face tight with bureaucratic resolve. We have protocols, he said. A trained K9 cannot be transferred to a civilian, let alone a minor, without full certification and oversight. Margaret's joy wavered, but the bid was accepted. The dog is paid for. It's not about money, Dawson replied. This is departmental property. There are safety liabilities, legal formalities. He gestured to Officer Murphy. Secure the K9 until the Oversight Committee can review the case. Murphy hesitated. Emma's arms clutched tighter around Rex's neck. Her small body trembled, but her voice, newly reborn, vanished again. Murphy took a step forward. Emma recoiled. Margaret moved instinctively, kneeling beside her daughter, shielding her with her arms. Please, she pleaded. She just found her voice again. Don't take this from her. Richard stepped forward too, not to pull Margaret away, but to stand beside her. This isn't right, he said simply. The hall moments ago, loud with applause, fell deathly quiet. Murphy paused, then slowly reached for the leash. Rex growled, not with anger but with warning. A low, steady sound, a sound that said, "She's mine now." The room shifted. Emma was no longer a civilian to Rex. She was his partner, his person, his promise. The growl stopped everyone. Rex didn't lunge, didn't bark. He simply stood between Emma and the adults, every muscle taut with the instinct to protect. His gaze never left her tear-streaked face. Emma whispered something into his fur. Then slowly she rose. With Rex at her side, she walked straight to Chief Dawson. Her shoulders quivered, but her feet didn't falter. "My daddy said an officer keeps his promises," she said, voice soft but firm. "Rex promised to take care of me. He can't break his promise." Dawson flinched. Across the room, Officer Murphy's hands fell to his sides. "She's right," he said. "In my professional opinion, separating them now would cause real trauma. I've never seen Rex bond like this since Deputy Brownlee." Dawson's jaw clenched. "Policy exists for a reason." Steve Wells stepped forward. "My attorneys have prepared full liability coverage," he said. "The bid was legal. The child is safe. You're not just fighting sentiment, you're fighting fact." Even Blackwell, the rival bidder, approached and offered a compromise. Certified handlers, professional training, oversight, all at his expense. But it wasn't the paperwork or Wells's authority or Blackwell's offer that changed everything. It was Emma, collapsed to her knees again, silent tears, falling arms wrapped around the one being who never asked her to be different. Rex remained still stoic, grounded, unyielding, a shield in fur. Dawson looked at them, at the image now burned into every camera in the room, a girl rediscovering her voice, and the dog who had guarded it all along. He exhaled and nodded. The crowd held its breath as Chief Dawson finally stepped aside. Officer Murphy returned not to take Rex away, but to kneel beside Emma. With quiet reverence, he offered her the leash again. "K9 Rex," he said, voice thick with emotion, reporting for duty. Emma took the leash. Rex leaned into her side tail low and wagging ears forward. It was the stance of trust, of choosing. Margaret watched with tears streaming down her cheeks. "What did she say to him?" Murphy whispered. Margaret smiled, voice trembling. "The same thing Samuel always told Rex at the end of every shift." She paused, watching her daughter press her cheek against Rex's head. "And we're going home now." Steve Wells stepped forward with the envelope payment in full, and another with legal documents, liability waivers, support plans, certified handler offers. Every angle covered. Chief Dawson signed off. It was done. Rex was home. In the days that followed, the photo would grace national headlines: a small girl, a retired police dog, and a bond that defied rules, risk, and reason. But in that moment, none of that mattered. On the edge of the stage, under the soft light of a spring afternoon, Emma knelt beside Rex. Her hand rested on his back. Her eyes closed, and for the first time in 5 years, the silence surrounding her wasn't empty. It was full.